things. I don't know which one would be. Ornery. Funny. But get even. Sneaky. But Chan was always trying to, just an aggravator, but kind of like I had to get even with him, and we were back and forth all the time. What a good brother. And someone said, describe 3 things about Chan that is interesting. You can't put it in 3 things. There are so many. But I know one of them that I always appreciated about was there was always something going on. Anytime that you was around, there was action, and and then either you were in trouble or I was in trouble, one or the other. And most generally, you figured it out so that I was in trouble. When I got the trouble part, you got away with it. Mom would take us in the car, and we would go to Mrs. Rawson's. And then from Mrs. Rawson's, we would take the community attraction bus and go downtown to Titke's. And we would spend our day with Mom shopping in Titke's.
So let's all go down to Titke's. It's fun to shop at Titke's.
It was just like one of those movies, Santa Claus, all the action going on, and we would kind of get lost in the shuffle. Just you and I would take off. You was always the leader. In fact, you got me in a lot of trouble. But anyhow, this one particular place, maybe you recall it, that we was drawn over to where the keys were being made. It said free keys while you wait. And so you said, here, Danny, have a key. And then you took a key. Long story short, a few days later at home, I'm trolling this key around, and Mother says, where did you get that? And I said, well, Chan gave me it. He's got one. We got to teach you. You stole that. Now you got to take it back. We ended up having to take them back, and all that week, I was worried about what they would do. I thought they was going to put us in jail. Anyhow, we went back and kind of backed up to the counter and handed them the key. There was no problem, but it was just that you were the leader. Back, I think some of the first memories I had with my brother was trying to keep up with him. And there was a part of my life I was always wanting to be like Chan because of he was always the leader of the pack. Always adventurous.
Yeah.
And then I was always the kid brother. And that was Smitty's little brother, But, as far as around the house and stuff, we worked hard. And Chan was really good, very clever about how to get out of the work. But you was, obviously, you was always trying to get one up on me, and I was trying to get one up on you. Yeah, one night it was bedtime, and I got to bed before Chan did. And of course, when I piled in the bed, the door would always go back by itself by gravity pull. And when I piled in bed, I noticed the door would just, especially that night, would go closed. So I got the bright idea of taking a string and tying it around the door and pulling it taut, and then climbed in the bed and turned off the light. And I held this string which would hold the door open. And it took forever. Chan finally came up and flipped the lights off and piled into bed, and it was settled down pretty quiet. And then I would release the string, and the door would start creaking. And then I heard Chan say, Daddy, Daddy, and I wouldn't answer because I was laughing so hard. But anyhow, he finally kept saying, did you hear that? And I let the string go, and the door really creaked and went closed. Man, he piled out of the bed and turned the light on, saw the string, and followed it right to me, and then started beating me in the arm. But it was worth it. That was one story. We had a family event, and my brothers were all around, and Chan had his little Harley Davidson motorcycle. He was getting ready to go someplace with it. And I had a whole firecrackers, and I felt real brave because my other brothers were there. So I set the firecrackers off right down by his wheels. He couldn't get off the bike fast enough trying to get to me. And all my brothers come after him and held him back. I got away with that one, but it got even later. I remember one occasion he was teaching me how to drive a car, and he had a 49 Ford coupe. And you taught me how to shift and put it in first gear and take off, and then put it in the second gear and let it back off so you could hear the mufflers. And now he said, I'm going to get on the back of it, I'm going to set on the trunk. So he got in the trunk and we got all positioned. And I took off rather fast, and he started yelling at him. I pushed him off the back of the trunk. Anyhow, I finally stopped, then he came back, and this is how Chan always got my attention. I told you! Anyhow, put it first, then second, and then let off. And I said, I can see it to this day. I looked in the rearview mirror, and Chan was doing one of these. Hold it on so we could hear the mufflers. My brother Gerald had a 36 Ford sedan, and he went off to the service for a while, and that old car was sitting in the barn. So no one was home, so Chan and I managed to get the car started. It took it in the field and rolled it over on its side. We were both in this car. Anyhow, we managed to get out of the car, go to the house, get the old tractor, and flip the car over and drag it back up and put it in the barn and cleaned up as much as we could. Didn't do any damage to speak of, and no one ever knew about it.
Well, this is the background. This is the little noise that we get to hear.
And he taught me how to swim. He literally threw me in a quarry. I couldn't swim, but he was watching and I learned to swim that way.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard that saying about if at first you don't succeed, then skydiving's not for you?
On a hot summer day, we walked upwards to 7 or 8 miles to go to an old quarry to swim. And when we got there, it was really nice, but it was starting to get cloudy. And I didn't know how to swim. Everybody was jumping in the water and swimming, so I wasn't paying any attention, and Chan come up behind me and threw me off about a 20-foot cliff. And I went down, and I come back, and I was mad because he threw me in the water. I started swimming. Well, one time Chan came to me and told me, he said, well, let's go back in the woods. And we cleared out this woods about 500 feet, and it took us into our buddies' woods and background, Earl and Charlie Wolf. So the day we cleared that out, that night, Chan was going to take the tractor, and I don't know for sure if he was going on a date with it, but he stuck it through the woods, and he was gone in the evening. Pop worked in the evening, so he felt like he could get away with that. So anyhow, he was gone for I don't know how long. And then he come back and he decided that he was going to race a Silver King tractor out in front of our house, but it was going to be, of course, in the evening and with no lights. And anyhow, he told me, he said, now go in and talk to Mother and distract her, because this tractor is going to make some noise going by, so you make sure you turn the TV up. So I did, and anyhow, I heard him come. I could hear him. Mother said, did you hear that? And I said, no, it just sounds like a tractor. And I said, no, I don't hear nothing. And I heard him go zooming by. You got all that one all right. Never thought you'd make it to 80. I thought a long time ago you get burnt out in the teenager years. Some things was really dangerous. And I remember coming home from school one time, I was driving, no, you were driving, and then you pulled off the side of the road and said, Daddy, you drive, I can't drive no more, and you were in severe pain. And I got you home and found out that you was having an appendicitis attack, and anyhow, that ended up, you had to rush off to the hospital. And obviously you made it. One other time was really, I think it was a little bit of a miracle that he didn't get his head squashed. Anyhow, what happened, we were in a mom and pop's garage changing a transmission in a 50 or 49 Ford. And it was a cold day, and we had the front of the car jacked up, and Chan, of course, was underneath it with no jack stands. And I'm watching and handing him tools, and he said, go to the trunk and open it up and get some tools out. So I had to lift the garage door, and when I lift the garage door, the car started rolling. and it fell off the jack stand, and he was underneath. And it came down on him, and I heard him go making an awful noise. Anyhow, I looked under the car, and all I could see was the light bulb, and it looked like blood, but what it was red carpeting.
Oh.
And I seen a 5-pound can of Maxwell House coffee can where he was catching the oil, and the top of that was smashed down, and Chan's head was laying between the transmission and the floor. I mean, he was laying this way. He had turned his head so he would lay flat against the transmission. So he could talk. He said, "Get Daddy, go to the trunk and get the jack out." So I did everything he said, and I followed the instructions and jacked the car up. And he scooted out from underneath that car. By then, Mother was out there, and everybody was running in a circle. Mother was really panicking over the whole thing. But anyhow, obviously he came out just fine. But that was a scary moment. Now, one other time in the garage, we were fighting. And we got in a fight in the garage. I remember you got the best of me, and I got sick of it. So I did a body slam and slammed you into 2 big marble slabs. They were about 5 feet tall, about 2 inches thick. And I slammed you into them, and when I did, the slabs stood up. And when they stood up, you walked forward just a little, about a foot, and then the slabs came over and took you and slammed you into the slabs and broke them off. And you came out of that one all right. You know, one other time, we were horsing around in a cornfield, and you know how you put the stalks up and you make them like a little igloo? Well, we would run and tackle them, and you were the leader of the pack, and so you piled into one of them real fast, and when you flipped over it, and where they cut the corn off with a sickle, it stuck up like a point, and you drove that right into your neck, and you can still see today, you still got that scar. It was, I forget how close it was to your esophagus. And you came out of that one, and then one time I think Joe was using an axe, and the axe head come off and hit you in the head. I can say it, I think you're very fortunate you made it to 80, plus the wrecks. I was sitting in English class one time in the 9th grade. You were out of school working, and I'm sitting in the class, and I saw you go by. You were late for work, and pretty soon, before my class was over with, your car was going back the other way, wrecked, and I piled out of there at school and went to try to find out what happened to you, and you were all right, but practically totaled your car. You came out of that one all right too. He always let me drive to school. I had he had a '54 Ford coupe. It was yellow, and he let me drive it one morning. He said, "Go ahead and get the car and bring it around here, back it out." So I got in the car and see nothing wrong with it. On my side, I got in the car, backed it out, and I seen Mother coming out of the house, walking with Chan. And I heard her say, "Oh, what did you do?" And here, some drunk the night before hit him doing about 80 miles an hour and took the right rear fender and put it in the back seat. And when I got in the left side, I didn't see nothing wrong with it. But he drove it home with the whole fender in the back seat. I remember one time, Chan had a particular favorite spot that he'd always park. And I wasn't driving that morning, and he come around the corner, and Charlie Smith had parked his car where Chan usually pulled in. And Chan said, he's not supposed to park there. We come around the corner, and old Charlie was out there talking to everybody about his French-in headlights. Anyhow, Chan was ticked. Anyhow, he got right to that car, and within just the 2 or 3 feet, he hit the brakes. I think he was going about 30 miles an hour. Hit the brakes, and he thought he was going to stop before he hit the car, and ended up, what happened? He slid into Charlie Smith's French-in headlights and busted them all out. What a mess. He got out of that one all right. We had a little fist fight. The last day of school, what ended up happening, I saw his black car pulling around, and I was sitting in biology class, and I heard the doors opened up to the hallway, and then all of a sudden I heard the exhaust change buffer system. I knew him. He sat there, I think it seemed like 10 minutes revving up his pipes, and the racket all the way down through the hall while the classes was going on. Just, man. Anyhow, then he took off throwing stones. I thought he was going to get, no diploma. but he got out of that one, all right. Well, this kid in school had a squirt gun, and he was walking around the hallway squirting everybody, and he happened to squirt Bonnie. And Chan found out who did it, and the guy, I was already in the bathroom, and the guy was in the bathroom. I'll never forget it. Chan come in the door, and as soon as he opened the door, his ring flew through the air. I caught his ring, and he decked the guy that did that. And he put him right out there on the floor and turned around and told him off and then left. He never did that again. Some of my real first memories was cars and hot rodding them up and knocking out clutches and transmissions. And Chan was always the one in school that would change transmissions and clutches. We had an old garage in Temperance, Michigan that somebody let us use, and we pulled these cars in, and he was so good at knocking transmissions out and replacing them, and clutches and pressure plates and throw out bearings. He was really good at it and fast at it. When he started getting jobs in schools, the buddies in school kept saying, hey, you know, we'll have you change ours. First thing you know, we had this little thing going in this little garage, and we'd go until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning changing out transmissions. And I was learning all the language. And we didn't have like extension lights with covers on them. And I'll never forget this. My job was to hold the light so he could change the transmission. So I'm tired. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, just a kid. I'm cold, really cold, stinky in there. Everybody's trying to smoke cigarette. I had this flashlight. He had it down by his neck, and I burned his neck.
Ooh, ouch.
He chased me all over that ground. Finally, I found a place to land that was in the rafters of the old building. I got up there and stayed up in it. Sinner, heed these words of mine. We had evangelists come to our church, and he so convicted me that I had to go up and alter my life, and I confessed everything to him and talked to him. He prayed with me. And then when I was done praying, I said, would you pray for my brother? He was a lot worse than I was. And I said, a number of years ago, I told Chan that, and he kicked me. He did not like what I told him. But I said, well, look at the results. It worked. Well, Chan had a 125 Harley, and it was barely enough to go 55 miles an hour. And he drove like 45 miles every day to Driggs Dairy and worked in the dairy. Must have been shovel manure. I forget what he had to do. On the way home, sometimes I remember one time he told me he'd get a pint of ice cream, and then he would get on his little 125 and head out and put the ice cream right between his legs and take a bite every once in a while. And he said he would always get behind a semi to break the wind speed. Well, he found the perfect spot. And he'd behind the semi, and I might not be telling this all exactly right, but sometimes he would hold on to the semi and go for a free ride. Well, there's one particular time while he was eating his ice cream, he was behind the semi, and the semi realized he was back there, and so he ditched him. And in the process of doing that, Chan almost lost control, went into a cornfield. He said he had ice cream all over it. But he came out of that one all right. If there is any work for me. I got in trouble one time with the 3 buddies. We went crow hunting, and we come across a bulldozer, and the guys decided that they were going to destroy the bulldozer. Couldn't start it, so they put sand in a gas tank, and I hate to tell you this, but they peed in it. And I said, you guys, you're gonna get in trouble. I said, I'm out of here. I took off. Anyhow, a day or two later, there was a knock on the door, and Johnny Bridge and I was in the basement watching homemade movies. And I looked up the top of the steps to see a patrolman standing there. And I heard my mother said, she said, oh, you must mean Chan, not Nanny. But Chan was notorious.
That's a good.
And you would flat out tell me point blank how ugly my girlfriends were. You would tell me everything about you should be dating this girl because she looked like she got ran over by a truck. And you had a good way of bringing it across to me where I took a real good look at it, and a lot of times you were right. But I would have to say, though, that he was even looking out for me when we they said, Dan, there's a pretty girl next door to where we moved to in Cary. Come on down.
Who was she?
I don't have to figure that one out. But long story short, he had a tendency to, even at that, when he introduced me to her, we were in the house that day. We were all talking and getting acquainted, and he did something that is totally embarrassed me. He said, I don't know if you can do this or not. And Mary Ann was sat there. I don't know if you can do this or not, but I've been trying to work on this. And he said, get on all fours and lift your right leg and your right arm and see if you can balance yourself. I said, I've been having trouble trying to do that. So I did that with everybody around, and he said, I did all of that. He said, now bark.
Well, Danny's really told it all, but I did tell you before, though, that when they moved in next door to us, I was working at the phone company in Cary, and Mom picked me up for lunch every day and brought me home, and there's this good-looking guy unloading a car. But I said, gee, I wonder if he's got a younger brother. And my mother says, oh, who cares? I hope he has an older brother.
I talked to Chan not too long ago, and I called him about our life at home. And we kind of summed it up that we were really close growing up, of course. The two of us, and we was always wanting to get into stuff and being mischievous, and didn't know it at the time, but we was trying to be clever and busy doing stuff. And it really boiled down to it after a while. I told him, I said it was an honor. I look back and it was a privilege to be the best man in his wedding, which really surprised me at the time. But he said, this is really where it's at. He said, we had each other's back. I understood him and he understood me. And he could do things to me sometimes that no one else could do and get away with it because he was my brother. And I always valued that, because a lot of times he told me, he cut through it all and told me like it is. And I think that's probably still the way it is. I can call him up and he'll cut through all the red tape and all the fluff and tell me, the truth, which I think is very valuable. And I forgive him for all what he did. I have to, because I'm a Christian and the Bible tells you have to.
First of all, my dad and Uncle Chan looked a lot alike, so I was very confused growing up when I'd see old pictures at Grandma Smith's house as to who was Chan or Dan. So that was a little confusing as a kid. And then being one of the youngest, but one of my favorite stories is when I spent the summer up at Grandma Smith's house. Sometimes I get to go over and stay with Janine and Uncle Chan and Aunt Bonnie. And Janine and I were watching Vincent Price in a movie called The Fall of the House of Usher. So we're watching the TV show and it's getting to this really intense scene. And all of a sudden, from nowhere, somebody grabs our legs. And it's Uncle Chan, and we are screaming at the top of our, that's one of the worst, maybe first early memories of really feeling like I know what it's like to die of fear, because it was his timing, everything was impeccable. So yeah, just lots of great memories, and just want to wish you a very happy birthday and hope that we all get down there to see you and you come up and see us. Lots of love.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, that we could send this stuff to Chan and on his birthday, and wish him a happy birthday. I'd like to come out and see him before we all hit the hay. Okay.
Bye.